and she could be alone with the killer.
The operator immediately dispatches police to the crime scene. I was off and got a call that there was a dead body and looked suspicious. Patrol officers have already cleared the house. When lead detective Manny Lassick arrives, I was the first homicide detective on scene. The patrol officers, initially took me through and showed me what they had seen.
Lucille Johnson lays in a pool of blood at the end of the hall with her head against the base of a door.
Now, there wasn't a whole lot of ransacking that I could see, but the violence that occurred to Lucille stood out. There was a pillow over her face.
The scene is quite unusual for a neighborhood where normally a very petite senior should have been living in safety.
Fairly quiet street, decent-sized lots with nice homes in the neighborhood, an upscale neighborhood. Lucille Miner is born in 1912 in Eureka, Utah. Kind, loving, and accomplished, she is a graduate of the Latter-day Saints Business College and a former member of the Salt Lake Exchange Club. Lucille is active in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, president of the Utah Broadcasting Association, and president of the Investment Center. She marries Howard Johnson in 1933, and they are together for almost 56 years before he passes away in 1989. Lucille Johnson is independent, and after her husband's death, continues to live in the same house where they raise their children. She keeps in close contact with their children, Shirley England and Jerry Johnson. In the summer months, Lucille is up by 6 a.m., working in her garden. She spends her days caring for elderly neighbors or anyone else in need. Her grandchildren take a high priority. She keeps toys stored in the house for when they visit.
Lucille Johnson is healthy. She still drives. She runs all her own errands. She shares an interest in genealogy with a nephew, and they work on family projects together. He spends a lot of time in the family home, and Lucille has helped him financially for several years.
But the week before her murder, Lucille tells him she is tired of constantly being expected to contribute financially, and she is going to start cutting back on support.
The day of the murder, a report is broadcast on the local news. Lucille's son, Jerry Johnson, hears his mother's address announced on the radio, but doesn't hear why. At the murder scene, police collect the pillow that was over the victim's face.
Lucille is wearing a red shirt covered with blood, and her body is laying face up. There's blood spatter on the walls and door. She fought for her life.
The height of the blood splatter indicates the victim is on the ground when she is savagely beaten. Near the front door and across the living room, Lego bricks are scattered. Shirley, Lucille's daughter, waves a red flag to police. She said, no, that'd be out of order. If somebody came over to play, those blocks would be put away. If they didn't put them away, she would put them away. She gave me some history of her mom, how she was a real meticulous housekeeper. She kept her house real neat, clean.
The scene appears to be a robbery gone bad. There are items missing: a high-end purse, some rings, and a necklace. However, there's other valuable items left behind, like a wallet and another necklace. So it's not obviously clear what happened here.
The only clues detectives have are the blood-soaked pillowcase and the pieces of Lego that are indicated out of place by the daughter. We gathered the Lego blocks that were in the front room, went through, documented, the scene where there was some blood spatter on the walls, down at the end of the hallway, pillow, anything that would stand out as far as evidence-wise. We were there to document and gather.
There's not a lot to go on at this time. It's it's a very sparse scene. And interestingly, there's no sign of forced entry. Lucille clearly opens the door willingly to someone.
You had your front door, and then you had a storm door that went on it. It had a latch on it. She would keep that locked, and there were some Lego blocks out in the driveway. We gathered those.
Detective Lastig asks Lucille's daughter if a smooth talker could have persuaded Lucille to open the door. But Shirley is adamant that her mother would have never allowed a stranger into her house. There doesn't seem to be a reason for this, but authorities know something the general public does not. In Utah, there appears to be a serial killer on the loose, and he targets elderly women who live alone.
If you're watching this Gerber Life Guaranteed Life Insurance commercial, there's a good chance that you're alive. And if you're not, well, this may not be of interest to you. Now, I know what you're thinking. Life insurance. I'm going to live forever. Death is what happens to other people. Well, for the sake of argument, let's assume you're wrong, and that someday you won't be watching TV anymore. I know it's not easy to talk about, so I'll do the talking. If you're 50 plus and alive, you can apply for Gerber Life Guaranteed Life Insurance with guaranteed acceptance, regardless of your health. And since this life insurance is guaranteed, you don't have to get a medical exam. In fact, you don't even have to fill out a health questionnaire. For a free quote, just call 800-441-0899. Then when you stop, if you stop watching TV, your family can use the insurance money to help cover your final expenses or anything else. For a free quote, call today, 800-441-0899. Your kids already inherited your ears, allergies, and questionable singing voice. Don't make them inherit your final expense tab too.
Whether you're a professional driver or just a fan, vehicle breakdowns are costly. It started tugging.
It started making some really weird noises. The last thing I remember is just the engine cut out.
If your check engine light comes on tomorrow, the repair could easily cost thousands.
Is that transmission? It's an exhaust leak, broken axle.
But with Endurance, you could never pay out of pocket for a costly repair again.
They covered a $14,000 engine replacement.
I had a seat sensor that went out, $1,400. Endurance paid it.
You got a brand new transmission, and we never seen the repair bill. Use any certified mechanic you want. Just bring your car in, and Endurance will pay them direct. All major parts are covered.
What I like about Endurance, they don't play games. There's no middleman. They're a solid company.
If I didn't have Endurance, I would have paid over $7,000 out of pocket to repair my vehicle. Something is going to break down. Make Endurance pay for it.
With Endurance, your car repair costs go way down, while your car's life expectancy goes way up, allowing you to drive more and pay less. One claim alone saved me more than $4,000. I've had 5 claims, and that is $3,500 that I've kept in my pocket.
So, who's going to pay for your next car repair? You or Endurance?
Whether you put 10,000 or 100,000 miles a year on your car, if it's less than 20 years old, Endurance has you covered with unlimited miles. Plus, your plan covers 24/7 roadside assistance anywhere in the country. Call right now to get $300 off any plan, plus a full year of our top-tier elite benefits, a $2,000 value free. And all Endurance plans come with a 30-day money-back guarantee, but you have to act now.
Call 1-833-496-5765. That's 1-833-496-5765.
When you get approved with Drive Time, you get the real deal.
It's the Drive Time Real Deal Maker.
It lets you customize the real down payment and monthly payment of the car you want to buy.
That's super smart.
And the deal you make on your phone is the deal you pay.
You make the deal yourself.
Get the real deal at drivetime.com.
Looking for a way to stretch the dollar? With Insurify, you can cut your car insurance bill in half. Scroll through dozens of prices and tap to switch online. That's it. No phone calls and no wasted time. Go to Insurify and save today.
At Consumer Cellular, we pride ourselves on giving you fast, reliable, nationwide coverage at up to half the cost of the leading carriers. But don't worry, we've got more than that going for us. Like this beautiful store in Arizona, for example. It's the perfect place for me to tell you a little bit more about our phones and how they can become your phones. You name it, we probably got it. We have the top smartphones from all the major companies. If it's state-of-the-art cameras you want, we got them. If you want a smartphone with lots of bells and whistles but won't break the bank, we've got that too. We even have a flip phone, like the Iris Flip. We even have watches. I know what you're thinking. What if I don't have one of these amazing stores in my town yet? Can I get these phones sent to me?
Yes, you can.
Is it easy?
Easy as pie.
New customers who buy any phone get 2 months of service free when they sign up by July 31st.
Call 800-918-5494
Or visit consumercellular.com to switch today.
She knows what she's talking about. Pick up the phone.
An active senior citizen is brutally murdered in her own home. Only a few items are missing, and the only thing out of place are a few of her grandchildren's Lego pieces strewn on the floor. But police know that a serial killer who targets elderly women in their homes is on the loose. Lucille Johnson is the 9th elderly woman to be murdered in Salt Lake City over a 10-year span. Between 1982 and 1991, 9 women over the age of 69 are found murdered in their homes.
And police don't know who's doing it, but they do suspect that Lucille could be part of a pattern.
Authorities trace Lucille Johnson's activities that day for clues of what might have happened and who might have crossed her path. The day of Lucille's murder, she is typically active in service of others. She visits the Senior Citizen Center, she shops for groceries, and drops off food for a neighbor in need.
At the end of her busy day, she's having problems with her vehicle, so she takes it in for servicing.
She has to leave her car, so an employee from the dealership drops her off at home.
Lucille is last observed alive in the afternoon. A neighbor sees her sweeping the exterior porch of her house.
Shirley intends to come over to Lucille's with a pizza after work, but she's too tired, puts it off to the next day. Her daughter never worries about Lucille, her very capable mother, being left alone.
The victim sustains a vicious attack. There are 24 rib fractures, and her sternum is broken.
There was a lot of beating to the head, chest. There was a bloody footprint on her chest, where she was stomped on the chest. And when we got her up to the medical examiner's office, she died from blunt force trauma, just a severe beating.
There are injuries on the front, back, and side of her head. 2 of the lacerations on the head penetrate the skull. Those injuries suggest the use of a bat or a stick.
The killing is excessively brutal given Lucille's petite size and advanced age. This degree of violence suggests anger, revenge. This killing looked personal, and the autopsy made clear that the victim fights back.
Fingernail clippings are taken and preserved in case Lucille managed to scratch her attacker.
Little old, single, widowed woman living by herself in that house. She's not going to be able to put up a whole lot of a fight.
Directly after Lucille's killing, daughter Shirley receives a strange and disturbing phone call from Lucille's nephew.
It's just a week earlier when Lucille tells the nephew that she's decreasing the financial support she's giving him. Now, in the wake of the brutal murder, he's even refusing to offer condolences.
The nephew makes a comment that's shockingly cold and displays a frightening lack of empathy.
I have my own feelings to deal with, but there are things in that house that belong to me, and I want to be there when you clean it out.
Shirley is reminded that there is, in fact, one person who had a problem with Lucille. As the story spreads, family and friends are growing increasingly suspicious of the nephew. Could Lucille have been murdered by a family member in cold blood over money? At the funeral, Shirley is hoping that her suspicions are unfounded. She approaches the nephew. She's very disappointed.
Even at the funeral, I kept thinking that it couldn't be. It couldn't be. I went over and tried to give him a hug, and it was like a block. Shirley England.
Lucille's extended family grows suspicious of the nephew based on his odd behavior. Investigators agree. The nephew becomes a person of interest.
Lucille Johnson is laid to rest at a memorial park in East Mill Creek, Utah. And her nephew is taken by police to be interviewed. I came at him hard. You know, it's not, well, did you do it? Do you want to tell me about it? You come after him and you go hard with him and you push. He gave us his alibis. You run every one of those down. Every sentence that he gave you, as far as what I was doing that night, where I was, who I was with.
Police compare his footwear size to the bloody shoe print found on Lucille's torso. It's not a match, and his alibi checks out. The nephew is cleared off the suspect list.
By the middle of the next year, police have followed all leads to no avail. And despite a possible serial killer on the loose, police still don't have a solid suspect for this murder.
There's frustration. You start going over everything again. And, you know, you got your crime scene photos. You're looking at them all. You know, you're examining each picture again, looking to see what is there. What did you miss something? What have I missed? What have I misinterpreted?
This ferocious killing of a vulnerable senior goes on the shelf. Lucille Johnson's case goes cold.
And then you box up everything that you've got. It gets put into archives. Yeah, it's a little bit personal. If I didn't do everything I could possibly do, and there's this evil person out there preying on somebody else, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Detectives have no idea they've laid the perfect groundwork. They just have to wait for the technology to catch up.
What if things got easier as you got older? Like healthcare. What if you could find great healthcare without the hassles? A place that understands your unique needs that's close to home. At Oak Street Health, we specialize in healthcare for older adults with care that focuses on keeping you healthy, not just treating you when you're sick.
I've been playing the piano since I was 8. I've been directing choir since I was 13. I teach music. Also, I am a van driver for an after-school program. Oak Street was a new facility. When I went to them, I was in the best of shape at all. I hadn't been taking my meds. I went back to do blood work, and that's when I found out that my blood sugar was like 509. I did not know that, my blood sugar was that high. This doctor at Oak Street was more concerned about your health, and that's what she stressed all during the conversation. She says, I'm here to get you on track and to make sure that you're as healthy as you can be. That impressed me.
At Oak Street Health, instead of waiting for health problems to happen, our team works with you to prevent them in the first place. More time with your doctor means you won't feel rushed. We'll make sure you get all your questions answered and that you always have our full attention. There's even a team member to take notes during your visit so your doctor can focus on you instead of looking at a computer screen.
I'm Joy, and I'm 66 years old. I had diabetes, and I have trouble controlling it. The doctor I went to always gave me a really, really hard time and everything. We never worked on how to solve it. and I wanted to try something different. And then I heard about Oak Street Health, and I was impressed the first time I came in because they really listen to you. Here, they spend the time with you. They ask all questions when you're, like wanting to know where you're at.
We go beyond what you find in most primary care offices, starting with an entire team that understands the needs of older adults. In addition to doctors and nurses, your care team includes social workers, someone to help you understand your Medicare benefits, and even mental health support. At Oak Street Health, we specialize in caring for older adults like you.
Call 1-855-268-6148 to schedule a visit at Oak Street Health today.
What I love about Oak Street is that they take care of my body, my psychological thinking, and all that. And I love that they do it together, and they really do work together. When I came in, I was really sad. They felt that I was just really, really depressed. And so they wanted to make sure that I was okay. And so they gave me somebody to talk to. I used to beat myself up all the time. I don't do that anymore. I don't go, oh, you're so stupid. I might say I'm silly.
It's all part of how we make healthcare easy. Oak Street Health offers same-day or next-day appointments, and our patient support line means there's someone available 24/7 to help you with urgent healthcare issues and questions day or night. We also coordinate all of your healthcare. So if you need a specialist, we'll help you find the right person and work with them to manage your care.
So once we got to Oak Street, as soon as you walk in, you just feel the vibe. It's a great vibe as you walk in, and everybody's so friendly and just attentive, like to your needs. So you can tell they actually care.
We're more than a doctor's office. We also offer a wide range of community events and activities like bingo, yoga, line dancing, and educational workshops where you can socialize and connect with friends and neighbors. Ready to switch to Oak Street Health? We make that easy too. We'll handle the transfer of your medical records and health history so you don't have to lift a finger.
Sometimes there's two important questions you can ask yourself, and that is, are you just surviving or you're thriving? And so I feel that I'm thriving.
Oak Street concentrates on each individual and what they're going through. They are a great place to go if you're a senior citizen. They're there to make sure that you're in good health.
Lots of things are more challenging as we get older, but healthcare shouldn't be one of them. At Oak Street Health, we specialize in caring for older adults like you.
Call 1-855-268-6148 to schedule a visit at Oak Street Health today.
Coming up next on True Crime Network. A well-loved senior citizen is murdered in a ferocious attack in her home. She appears to be the ninth in a string of serial murders of elderly women. But when no suspects are unearthed, her case goes into cold case storage.
Although Lucille's case is stalled, the investigation into the deaths of female seniors continues, and within a few years, it looks like there may be reason to reopen her case.
Salt Lake City is an idyllic community, surrounded by natural beauty with a strong central church. A relatively small population, it's a peaceful area that is low on unemployment and crime.
Utah has a dark past. The state is ranked 9th in the U.S. for the largest number of documented serial killer victims.
In the 1970s, while a law student at the University of Utah, Ted Bundy goes on a murder spree of women and eventually stands trial for kidnapping and murder. Arthur Gary Bishop is born and raised in Salt Lake City, a high school honors student and member of the Church of Latter-day Saints. He confesses to the murder of 5 young boys and is put to death by lethal injection in Utah in 1988. Gary Ridgway, born in Utah, is known as the Green River Killer. He preys on vulnerable women and is the second most prolific serial killer in the U.S.
Over the span of a decade, Utah police see a pattern in the murders of elderly women in Salt Lake City.
So there was multiple cases that were looked at that time of elderly women that had been murdered.
Daniel Troyer is 20 years old when he attempts to rape a 71-year-old paraplegic woman in 1979. He is swiftly in custody again for burglary and in prison until the summer of 1985. Weeks later, 83-year-old Drusilla Ovard of Salt Lake City is brutally beaten, strangled, and bludgeoned to death.
Detectives believe that the killer hurts his right hand in the attack, so they distribute a bulletin to patrol officers about a potential daytime burglar with an injured right hand. Soon after, officers catch a man with a bandaged right hand breaking into homes just blocks from the murder scene. His name is Daniel Troyer.
Police strongly suspect Troyer is involved in the death of Ovard and her 69-year-old neighbor, Thelma Blodgett, who was murdered 6 days earlier, but they can't prove it.
This time, Daniel Troyer is sentenced to 15 years for burglary, but is paroled again in 1988 and released to a halfway house. Troyer applies for Barber College. Shortly after, Ethel Lacow, who lives very close to the school, is killed.
Witnesses report seeing Troyer near Lacow's home just 2 days before she is murdered.
Police compare pubic hair found on Lacow's body, and it matches to Troyer.
In 1989, he is charged with Ethel Lacow's murder. However, 2 years later, the judge rules that certain evidence is inadmissible and gets thrown out. The district attorney appeals.
In 1996, the Utah Supreme Court rules in favor of the DA, and Troyer is recharged with capital murder. In 1998, DNA testing is done from the Drusilla Ovard crime scene, and Troyer's DNA is a match, so he is finally charged with her murder as well.
In June 1999, Troyer agrees to a plea deal. He pleads guilty to the murders of Lacow and Ovard so that he can receive a life without parole sentence as opposed to the death sentence. Authorities believe he has killed others, but there's not enough evidence to prove it.
Troyer looks like the kind of killer that would target Lucille Johnson.
But police discover that Daniel Troyer is in prison at the time Lucille was killed. He did not kill Lucille. And with Troyer eliminated as a suspect, the case goes cold until 20 years later.
Police receive a tip from a nephew of a man named John Sansing regarding a murder in 1991. The nephew states he hears on more than one occasion Sansing arguing with his wife Kara Sansing. She threatens to tell police about an elderly woman he admits to killing in Utah in 1991.
In 2013, detectives with Utah's Unified Police Department in the greater Salt Lake area look for cases that match this tip, and subsequently look at the Lucille Johnson case.
In 2013, I was assigned to our violent crimes unit, and part of my responsibilities in that unit was to investigate current homicides as well as past homicides, cold cases.
In that same year, the U.S. Department of Justice provides a $300,000 cold case grant. It is for cases that could potentially benefit from the advances in modern forensic DNA technology.
When DNA first came out, it was very, very expensive, time-consuming. You could go months before you had any results, and this particular grant that we had at the time was focused on DNA. And as I reviewed the case, I believe there was good evidence in this case that we could test for DNA, tests that weren't available in 1991 or even in the late 90s for detectives to use.
Sergeant Mike Ikiyamashiro, known as Sergeant Mike Ike, oversees the decision of what pieces of evidence will be used for DNA testing.
I looked at the clothing, I looked at photos, I looked at items of evidence collected from the autopsy, and as I searched through that, I made some decisions.
Sergeant Ike hopes that the killer's DNA is embedded within the fibers of the pillow, depending on how forcefully it was pressed down to Lucille's face.
I identified some of the items, clothing, a pillowcase, and I submitted several articles of evidence, and in this case specifically, the fingernails that were collected at the time of autopsy.
And if Lucille fought her killer, as police believe she did, there could be DNA under her fingernails.
And CODIS returns a hit. John Sansing. Sergeant Ike is able to tell Detective Lassick, who is one of the first on the scene in 1991, that he's found a DNA hit for Lucille Johnson's killer.
I let him know about the CODIS hit, the identification, the process that we'd be going through. And from a detective that had that case in the 90s, the only thing you could genuinely see in his eyes is that he was glad. I think that's another great trait of good detectives. There's no pride. There was no resentment. He was just genuinely glad.
John Sansing has a record of arrests that put his DNA on file. In fact, he sits on death row in an Arizona prison for a rape and murder in 1998. But Sergeant Ikio Mashiro doesn't have enough to convict him in the Lucille Johnson case yet.
Although his DNA is found under her fingernails, it could be there innocently. Police need to investigate how Sansing crossed paths with Lucille because they're going to need more if they want to convict him.
Sergeant Ikio Mashiro speaks to Sansing's wife Kara, who's presently in prison herself. She reports that John Sansing worked in Salt Lake City County at a car dealership in 1998. Lucille takes her car in to be serviced on the day she is killed and is given a ride home by someone at the dealership.
The suspect, part of his job responsibilities was to shuttle people back while their vehicle was being serviced. So he had the opportunity to see where she lived, talk with her a little bit, and then return later in the evening when this attack occurred.
Still, this could be argued as circumstantial and isn't enough to seal the case. Sergeant Ike goes to Arizona to interview John Sansing and investigate the shocking killing that lands John Sansing on death row in an Arizona prison.
Most repeat murders have patterns, and these are details that Sergeant Ike may be able to use to prove beyond any doubt that Sansing murdered Lucille Johnson.
Everything is riding on this interview.
This was a unique interview because of the security issues, the status that he was under. It was a crowded room with a lot of security measures in place. So it was very tense from the very beginning.
As the original host of Wheel of Fortune, I was blessed to be part of building one of the greatest game shows in history. During that time, we handed out millions of dollars to thousands of contestants. I thought, what if we paid the contestants their winnings in gold instead of cash and prizes? Back in 1976, we had a wonderful contestant named Lee, whose 3-day winnings were valued at $12,850. And you know what? That was a pretty big haul back in 1976. So I wondered, what would have happened if Lee had put $12,850 in cash and then put $12,850 in gold in a safe, just sitting there side by side from 1976 until now? We all know that $12,850 in cash would still be sitting there, but it would be worth a whole lot less than it was in 1976. But that $12,850 in gold, safely stored away, it's worth $135,000 as of the taping of this commercial. Now, that's more than 10 times the original amount.
And since the taping of this commercial, the price of gold has increased substantially to more than 15 times the original amount.
And that's why I've been putting my money in precious metals for years, and I don't see any reason to stop now.
If you would like to learn more about why physical gold should be an important part of your portfolio, simply call to receive the complete guide to buying gold, including facts you should know about making any gold, silver, platinum, or palladium purchase. Call now to also receive our new 2024 Global Gold Forecast Special Report. Inside, you'll find the real issues on why you need to start owning gold today. You can also receive a copy of our new report, Protection in the Risk Zone.
With 2 decades in business, over $1 billion in transactions, and more than 500,000 clients worldwide, U.S. Money Reserve is one of the most dependable gold distributors in America.
It's coming.
Check for anyone who needs help.
Will do.
I found another body.
You recognize him? Never seen him before. The obvious theory is that our killer used the flood to cover their tracks. I'd be careful if I were you.
Watch this. Witness what happens to this woman's bags under her eyes in an actual time lapse in just minutes. The problem will disappear before your eyes with a revolutionary topical formulation that works in just minutes, and the effects will last for hours. Over 1 million people are using this topical technique to visually reduce puffiness and bags, even fine lines and wrinkles on the face and forehead. Introducing Plexiderm. Jump on board and say yes to this amazing $14.95 Plexiderm trial. Order right now. We'll pay your shipping.
Powerful stories.
Case goes cold, but it's never forgotten.
Of determined detectives.
We need to find out what happened. I'm gonna solve this.
That got justice against all odds. Almost unsolved. Next on True Crime Network.